Here we are, episode 69. Can you believe it? It's been such a long time that we've been doing this. And tonight we're talking about Mojo. So maybe we're talking about the Mojo of this experiment that we've been doing, because that's actually how it started. So let's see, are you sitting comfortably? Why? Because it's about to get interesting. But before we get really interesting, let's say hello to people. We'll start with Jennifer.
Hello, I am Jennifer Jakowski. I am in Canada. I'm a registered psychotherapist, a certified Canadian counselor, and intuitive life coach. And when it comes to Mojo, I would have to say I work with my clients to get them back to their authentic self. And that's really where our Mojo lies.
Cheers. Mary.
I'm Mary Corbett. I'm a life coach who focuses mainly on working with people who are mid-career who have to face redundancy and get a new job, which is great fun. And oftentimes they lose their mojo in the process. So getting them to maintain their mojo while they're finding the new job is fun and a great place to work.
And Angela.
Hi, I'm Angela. I'm a kinesiologist and a coach, and I work with clients with whatever's going on in their lives. And that very much does belong with the Mojo aspect too. So whether they're trying to find it, whether they're trying to tweak it, whether they're trying to reinvigorate it, or even just accept that they've got somewhere hidden. That's how I like to work.
Cool. And I'm Leslie Marsh. And Mojo and me are reasonable allies, I would suspect. Still doing the mind methodology thing. So if you've been watching before, you will know that I have a little bit of a play with what it is that I actually do, because I change it all the time. And today I just realised why, because Jennifer told me. And so did Angela. But then again, that's another time, another story for another time. And it's also a little bit about Mojo, which is defined as talisman, magic, power, the essence of your intrinsic being that is up there, that is your intuition, that is the one thing that gets you out of bed in the morning. So sometimes, and we were talking about this, being very naughty, we were talking about this just before we started recording. I said something about, isn't it funny how people think that they've lost their mojo? Actually, you can't lose it. You can just have it turned down a little bit, or you can have the little pilot light snuffed out by somebody who says something very cruel to you or does something very cruel to you and kind of makes you think they've taken it away. But that's something that doesn't really happen, is it, Jennifer?
Well, and this is the thing about our mojo when we think about the aliveness within us, right? So our sense of vitality, our confidence, our creative energies, those things can flow, but you're saying about that when it gets taken away, and I don't think that mojo generally just disappears overnight. I think that it fades with life experiences that come in, and we talked about this, I think, before on the show, where we've lost our play, right? As adults, we get into this place of responsibility, and we start to adapt to all of the roles that we are meant to have. And what ends up happening is that adaptation turns into self-abandonment. This is where we start to let go of the things that bring us joy. And those are the things that feed our mojo. But as we, make these choices where I'm going to go with what I should be doing or what is the responsible answer, as opposed to what it is that brings me joy, I'm slowly kind of picking away at that energy within myself, that vitality, and then we begin to lose it. And then, of course, as you were saying, there's examples of when, we're doing good. And then we bump up against an energy, whether it's somebody else in our experience or, something that we hear, whatever it is, and we just go, and that energy fades away. However it is that has been released from us. I'm excited to talk about how we bring it all back.
Mm, mm. Reignite the mojo flame, definitely. Mary, that's something that you'd kind of do with people who are changing lanes and doing stuff.
Well, actually, what's really interesting is sometimes what we end up doing is actually they've been working very responsibly for the last 20 years and they're made redundant. And now they can actually do what they really want. And that's really fun. Now, practicalities are some people stay in jobs that they don't love. And sometimes, and you have to then look at, well, how do we find the joy for them outside of work? Because they may say, I have these responsibilities, I can't ignore them. So I think that the finding our mojo, there are different contexts. And it's great if your day job is part of it and part of that energy and creativity. But the reality for many people is actually it's everything I do outside of work rather than what I do in work. And they say, but that's the way I want it. I want I love these, you hear that wonderful quote, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And that sounds wonderful. But for a lot of people, they actually like that distinction. I go to work, it might be slightly drudgery, and that's okay. But when I'm not working, I'm just a whole different person. And that's their way. And I will never judge them for that. That's the choice they've made. But I think what I worry about is when you find somebody and they don't know what they do that gives them joy. That you
Mm,
ask them, what will give you joy just on the day to day, especially people who've been made redundant, that they can't fill a pocket of that time with pure, unadulterated joy. Then it's a serious job of work because you're they're going, oh, I don't know. And the exploration is fun, but it can be challenging. And I think people feel, oh, I have to find it. And I think that language of we have to find your mojo. Mm, no, it's there. We just have to awaken it up. We have to blow a little oxygen onto it.
mm.
I don't think the pilot light actually goes out. It's just very faint sometimes.
Yeah, the gas
I,
goes on a peep.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just, but it's still there.
It can be a lot of like identification situation because people identify so much and get so enthralled with the identification of their occupation that their occupation becomes their identity. And that can mean that the joy gets kind of pushed out.
Well, that's when people are facing retirement.
Mm.
If they've identified too much, the joy for what they're going to do when the job isn't there can be an interesting challenge.
Mm.
But
I
it's
did
fun.
once describe myself so much in my old job that somebody said, what am I going to do when I get to 50 and I have to, and you can't be doing this. And I remember saying to them, I will be found in rigor mortis with a squeegee in one hand and a thermometer up a dog's bum in the other. Because it's just, I couldn't see myself as doing anything else. And now, hey, look at me. Look what I'm doing. No dogs, no squeegees, no rigor mortis. Angela, what do you think?
I'm just horrified by that whole imagery that you've just given me. So
Oh, well, it wouldn't be TiC if I didn't do that to you at least once.
I know, but normally you go to somebody else once you've thrown that kind of bombshell at me, and I don't have to try and make something up straight after it. So where's my mojo hiding right now? It's scared of you, that's what it is.
Bubble, bubble,
But
toil and trouble.
but coming back to that identity thing, whether it is the job identity or the role identity or whatever, there are so many labels and identities that we carry around with us every day. And if that's changed or altered in any way, it can massively affect our personal power, where we come from, what we love, who we think we are. And I was talking to someone recently who was talking about a mutual friend who had recently got an ADHD diagnosis.
Mm.
And for him, this was the worst possible thing. He didn't want the diagnosis. He didn't appreciate it. It was something he was asked to do from his work. So it wasn't something that he had bought into. And all of a sudden, his entire worldview of himself was different. So how do you rectify or kind of pull that into line with your inner self and your inner knowing and your inner power, when suddenly, well, I've now got this label, and what does that mean for me? And does that make me a different person? And it doesn't make you a different person. It just gives you another level of understanding. But for some people, that can be massively jarring to the point that it snuffs out that pilot light until it's just this tiny little ember that you're not sure it's ever going to come back to full power or not.
It's a reframe job. It's a reframe job, understanding how to turn that on its head. I know for a lot of people that once they get the diagnosis, and even although there's, you can say to them, it's an explanation, not an excuse.
It suddenly
There's a
becomes an
deep dive that
excuse.
goes in there because the label has the identity of a stigma attached to it. And I think that that's something that we really have to think about when it comes to losing mojo, when it comes to inspiring mojo in someone else, isn't it, Jennifer?
Absolutely. And I think that the reframing that you were talking about is such an important piece of that, because if we recognize that, so much of our interpretation of reality, it all is what's happening in here, the way that we decide to frame something that happens in our experience. And so something like a diagnosis or even just a significant experience that happens, how we frame that for ourselves can either ignite our mojo or deplete it. And so it's really important to understand that, just because I have this thing, right, I get to decide what that actually means for me. And, to what you're saying with diagnoses, I think that oftentimes people fall into different categories. Either it's, oh, okay, that makes perfect sense. And now that's an excuse for, well, I have this, so this is going to be my behavior. Or like, I don't like this. I don't like being put into a box, and I don't want that to be my reality. And yet it's such a spectrum of how we can actually navigate that. We don't have to be put in any boxes. And even if we do have something that helps us gain better understanding, we still get to decide how we want to operate within that. And it's that ability to be empowered in it that enhances our mojo.
It's amazing how one thing can absolutely upset our definition of our space, of who we are, where we're supposed to be in the hierarchy of things, and how we're supposed to act when new information comes in. It's like suddenly discovering, here we go into the soap opera time, but it actually happens in real life. We're discovering that we've done a genealogical tree situation, and we found that actually we have siblings that we didn't know about. And then one part of the family says, well, I don't know who I am now, because now I'm not the second sister. Or, I'm who am I? What do I do? And having had experience of that, I actually said to them, well, you're still you, because nobody else can take that away from you unless you give it away. And this is it. She kind of, her mojo took the back door, right out the back door. It just went. She couldn't understand what to do. She wasn't really interested in anything else. And she couldn't understand why I was very shocked about it. I said, well, no, because it happens all the time. I mean,
But
people
for
do
her, it was
things.
obviously very significant, and it is that point of I've always been the second child, or and I suppose the same can be true if a sibling dies or if something else happens and they lose all contact. But it can also be as simple as a client I've been working with recently. One of her twin sons has now emigrated out to Australia for 6 months at least, and she's quite struggling with that concept of I don't have all my boys at home anymore. Now, the oldest one's already moved out. It's not as if they're all still living under a roof, but it's got to that point now as well. Who is she when she's been that mother of however many sons, and now only two of them are close by? But I think you get that come September when people start going off to university and it's the first time that the kids are away. But you've also got the same situation if someone goes through a divorce and suddenly they're now on their own and they didn't expect all the ins and outs of what that entails. And yes, it might have been a celebrated thing because it needed to happen, but there's a lot of aspects that think of when you're in a relationship. And likewise, when you're single, if you then become in a relationship, you've got to do things differently. So I think it's any of those changes and transition points in life could massively affect how you then use that mojo or don't, as this case may be.
Now, you see, there it goes. We've just hit the button on the fallacy of uncertainty. Because nothing is certain in life, really. We live in uncertainty. We are absolutely, everything in our bodies is uncertain because it's always in flux. Everything is always changing. And yet we have this psychological and kind of popularist idea of reality that, we've all got to have this, doing it this way, or it's a disaster. I almost went totally Strictly Come Dancing there. Craig Revel Horwood. It's a disaster, darling. So, yeah. And this is before coffee. So,
but
very
that
niche
is
references that Leslie's thrown out there.
Okay, but there is something.
There'll be more people who will know what I'm talking about.
I do think it's quite interesting because we keep hearing that people find change difficult. We're changing all the time.
Mm.
So we just have to reframe. And again, it's come back to this reframing of, do I want to stay in the moment of now and what it's bringing and just roll with it? Or take an active part and actually make a change for myself? We always have a choice. And I struggle because I struggle with people who say change is hard. I'm going, change is fun. So I sometimes have to temper my enthusiasm to match where my clients are at.
It's not about the change, it's about the familiar, comfortable part that suddenly they're going to have to fit their backsides into a different kind of chair. And it takes a while to wear it in. And they don't like that anymore.
It can also be that they've got in their mind what something's going to be like. And when that picture in their head and that image changes, it can massively catch them off guard.
Yeah,
absolutely. And this is where, that loss of mojo so often is tied to grief or to an unmourned loss, whether it's to do with our identity or dream of something being a certain way, expectation, all of that when we let go of ourselves in order to make something be a certain way, there is a grief in that we have to come back and claim that part of us again.
And it's because one step at a time.
Yeah, a lot of the time, though, that part has been subsumed by so much of the stuff that the roles that we feel we have to play, or we're taught that we have to play, that's expected of us. And when it's coming to empty nest syndrome, basically, is what we're talking about when we're talking about kids going away from the school and leaving the house. Also, there's this idea that when particularly women get to a certain age, they're useless. What do I do now? What am I supposed to do now? I'm not expected to be running after them, doing their washing. Don't worry, they'll bring their washing back with them. But it's one of those things that there is a whole kind of idea that when you get to menopause, basically, once you've stopped being useful for breeding, you're now an old person. You're now, and you really lost your usefulness. But actually, that is one of the
a well outdated thought, and I'm watching Jennifer's face.
You would like to think so. You would like to think so.
You'd like to think so. I think it's gone slightly post menopause, but women can become invisible.
Yeah,
but I think there's an aspect of how people feel in themselves, and I think there is an element of not allowing that to be the case, and I think that's a whole much bigger conversation.
What we're dealing with is a whole barrage of information that's coming from big pharmas and people who are dealing with it's a disease, it's not natural. So, actually menopause is like puberty. Puberty is not a disease. It's the other end of puberty. It's the other side of the coin.
It's only not natural because we never used to live this long.
Well, that was kind of Paleolithic, but you
Yeah.
know, I mean,
Yeah.
But here's the thing too, right? To everything that you're talking about in terms of this like external validation piece, right? Of this is how we're supposed to be. And our mojo is not going to come back when we are waiting for that external validation to tell us it's the right time or it's okay. Like that is that internal piece of that reframe where I go, okay, I don't have to chase my kids around 24/7, and maybe they'll come back with their laundry, but until then, what do I want to do? What is going to light me up? What can I align with that is going to feel fantastic in my experience right now?
yeah, we kind of get into that habit forming situation where it's like my husband the other day there was supposed to be going to an appointment, and we were going to the supermarket after the appointment, but because he's so used to going to the supermarket, the car drove itself there first before going to the appointment. And I'm kind of sitting there going, excuse me, where are we going? Don't we have a time situation going on here? And he's like, oh, bother, or words to that effect. And yeah, so there's a kind of getting into a routine, getting into the groove. You have to kind of get out the groove to see. You have to have a little bit more perspective to see that you can. And there is this thing where you see people, you know, in the old days, it used to be they would be called mutton dressed as lamb, which was one of the best kind of backhander insults that you could ever have for someone who was an older person who was dressing not quite how people would expect them to, because, you know, they're supposed to go into widow weeds and things like that after a while, in those days anyway. But it's still, there's still this kind of idea of, what do you think you're doing? What age are you anyway? You know, men are allowed to have this kind of life crisis situation that goes on when they hit 40, and suddenly they go and buy a motorbike and crash it up the back end of the garage because they can't get out the garage with it. But you know, but when a woman does it, it's something absolutely ridiculous. So there's mojo and then there's mojo. I mean, men are like, well, yeah, I'm having my midlife crisis, and it's midlife crisis. I'm going to go and do something totally unexpected and spectacular. Actually, it's not unexpected. We expect them to actually go and do something stupid. But
who says
But I
women
think
can't do the
that's
same things if they want to?
oh yeah, I
but
mean
I think that
basically
but
that's
I
it.
think but I think that's where you know, our wonderful world of the internet is our friend and our foe at the same time, because you see people who say, you know, use the F word far more often. You know, you should, and not give a damn and do whatever you want to do, and so you get that other people doing it, but your decision to be one of those people is a very internal process. It's not
Mm.
something you're going to learn from the internet, because you have to do the inner work. It says, actually, I want to do this. I want to be like the person who doesn't, I want to go ride the motorbike, or I want to go and wear the mini skirt, or have the abs of a 20-year-old. I personally know, but that's, you know, some people.
And that's just the
But
men, yeah.
but you know, but I think this is where, you know, this fear of missing out, then but part of it you fear it, and part of it you want to embrace it. So it's kind of, but the work of finding your mojo is internal.
Yeah.
It's an internal piece of work. You have to make the decision.
And just because for some women that they're not allowed to be seen or whatever the external expectations are, that doesn't have to be your truth, and it doesn't have to be my truth. And I think that's the
Exactly.
big thing is what is my truth? Never mind what other people think of me or expect of me, because their expectations are none of my business.
Mm.
I must admit, it's one of the best things about getting older, really getting to grips with other people's notions. None of my business. I don't care. I'll do me.
Yes.
So
Well, as
noticing.
Oscar Wilde said, everybody else is taken. So, you know,
Mhm.
It's true.
there was a guy who never really lost his mojo very much. Although he did kind of dampen it down with absinthe quite a lot. So yeah, there was
Anyway,
that.
back
You would
to
say.
what Jennifer was going to say.
Yes, but yes. as I go off on a tangent. Hello, Oscar. Bye.
That's this idea though of like rediscovering our mojo and how do we do that? Like where do we even start? And to what, a lot of what you were all just saying is this really honest inner noticing of where am I just going through the motions, right? What used to energize me that I have either minimized or put off or judged it as impractical because I don't have time for that, or, somebody who's in my position, whatever that looks like, doesn't do that. Just those places where we've dimmed ourselves to stay safe, to be accepted, to stay in a place of being needed or wanted, like really, really being honest with ourselves and answering those questions can help us really find what we want to do to bring that mojo back.
It's coming back to ourselves, isn't it? Because it's we were talking about it a couple of episodes ago. It's reconnecting with the inner child. It's reconnecting that part of us that has that spark of, nice, let's go and see. If I stick my finger in that, what happens? We've had so many people saying, don't do that because it hurts. You don't want to be doing that. And eventually you just stop doing it because it becomes something that, only grown-ups will do this or only children do that. But yeah, do we ever really grow up? Honestly, we might get slower. Do we really grow up? Is there not like that little kind of imp that's in there that wants to do something naughty?
I think it depends on the person, because I've got a number of clients who the thought of doing anything childish or impish is just so foreign because they've had it beaten out of them at a young age.
Yeah.
That it's just not appropriate for them to go down that route of being childish, of being full of joy and vim and vigor, or whatever the terminology is this week. And it's a big part of them that even the thought of going and doing something a bit different, get down on the floor and playing with their dog, that's just not normal for them. They'll take the dog for a walk, but they'll not go down on the floor and have a play with it, because no, you don't do that. That's not dignified. So I think there are some people that have got that, no, I can't do it.
Yeah. And it's hard when there's all of that rigidity in our experience because it takes away space for curiosity and for experimenting and for just finding the joy in something, which comes when we're in alignment with who we are. But when we're so caught up in all of the rules, right? Like we were saying earlier, all of the shoulds and all of the kind of rules around what it is to be whatever we think it is. That seriousness, even though there are times for it, I'm not saying that there aren't, but when we're so stuck on that being the reality for us, we lose sight of sometimes what is truly meaningful for us and what would actually allow us to be in an experience, even if it's a hard one, with joy and with the ability to bring, love and openness to something so that it can flow more naturally.
It's kind of reframing that between fear and anticipation again. It's like saying, I'm too scared. I don't want to. Actually, when you're tightening yourself up and you're not going to do it, then it's true. You will probably hurt yourself if you're going to do something entirely different because you're so tense. Whereas if you kind of just walk into it, we had a vet at one point, and there was a really, really, everybody else was like, oh no, it's not that dog. Oh my goodness, nobody's going near that dog. He just came wandering in, like, nothing was happening. It's like, hi there, how you doing? Goes up to the dog, opens its mouth and just sticks his hand in and pulls it, whatever it was that was out of the dog's mouth. And everybody's standing there going, eh? And it's like he didn't know the dog was going to react or how the dog would normally have reacted. And part of the issue was the dog was so bloody surprised that had happened, but it didn't do anything either. So it's like, ooh, and I am not suggesting that anyone should go and stick their hands down a dog's throat for any reason whatsoever. Please don't.
Or
It does hurt.
anyone's for that matter.
Or anything's throat. No, it hurts. It hurts. Don't do it. Don't do it. No, no, no. Nasty, nasty. Only this guy could get away with it because he was kind of energetically different, shall we say.
But there are benefits to that surprise, because sometimes when you do get a surprise, and hopefully it's a pleasant one, that you will act differently and you will jump in a different way, or you'll step forwards and you'll think, oh, I really enjoy that.
Yeah, but there's also this idea of like the preconceived notion, right? When he went into it with openness of just, nope, this is how I'm going to do it. Whereas everybody else in that scenario is holding back because they think they know what's going to happen. And then there's this anxiety being built up inside and all of the anticipation for the negative thing, which then determines how you would go into that situation. And this is where we have self-fulfilling prophecy and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We bring a lot of this on because we go into it with that view of this is how it's going to happen.
And that'll snuff your
This is how it's
mojo
always
out.
happened.
Yeah. It's always been this way and it'll always be that way until somebody does it differently. And then, I don't know about you, but there are things that happen and I sit and think to myself, how the hell did I do that so I can do it again? And most times it doesn't work. Because I wasn't actually in my body when I did it. My whole conscious mind had just gone out to the back of the bus and was having a sleep. And it's just a case of, but that is part of Mojo as well. That's part of the kind of talisman, the touchstone of how to do things that you didn't know you could do. It's like Jennifer, like you were saying, it's being open about it to a certain extent. It's like, oh, I wonder what'll happen if, yeah, would it, can I
But it's
turn
also
that on its head?
it's down to the limitations we place on ourselves. And when I
Yeah.
say we, I mean consciously as a collective, as a human species. But there's different things that, well, you can never do this. You can, what was it, the 1 minute mile, was it? That
Yeah. Yeah.
not a 10-minute mile, sorry, it wasn't a 1 minute, because that's just insane. But it was whatever the
4
barrier
minute mile.
was.
It was the 4 minute
It's
mile.
a 4 minute.
It's the 4 minute
However
mile.
many minutes it
Minutes,
was, but it was that concept that nobody can ever break it. And then the minute somebody broke it, 3 other people broke it the same year.
Yeah, but
Because
they
it was
they
that
found out how he
mindset
broke
of
it.
you can't do it.
He broke it down into seconds. He didn't go for the minute. He broke it down into small bites.
But regardless, it was the collective consciousness of we can't do this.
Yeah.
And it
It's
only took
impossible
one
for the human
person
being to do it.
to then be able to do it.
What's
Well,
in this
and
water?
yeah, to that and Leslie, to what you were saying about that whole like when you were out, right? Because I think our analytical mind can't do it. It's great for so many things, but it is not connected to our truth in our body. And when we connect to the truth that's in our body, we don't have that same limitation that the mind puts on things. And so, you know, this idea even of mojo and where does that come from? Like it lives within our body. It's our movement, our breath, our, you know, our awareness, creativity, pleasure, all of those things that awaken within the body that light us up, right? Those moments where we go, oh, I feel so energized. Oh, I have the tingles. Oh, that feel like, right? Like those moments of connection, we feel that in the body, and then the mind gets in the way and it does all of the, yeah, but, well, you know, you should. Well, actually, right? Like all the things that the mind does that block us from that connection. But in that situation where you're out of it, whether it's, you know, your example or the runner and all of that, it's that we get out of the limiting belief that the mind has, and we just tap in and go, oh yeah, that feels good. That lights me up.
Yeah. I like a bit of lighting up. It's always fun.
And sometimes, you know, when somebody is in a situation where they feel where they're just feeling bleh, and they don't know what they want to do. Those tiny steps of just even finding the 2 minutes, the minute or two of joy, and then building on it. And then the more of, would you like a bit more of that? Well, we'll do it for a bit longer the next time. Do a bit more of it. Do that. People sometimes they need very hand holding to find their way back. It's not always easy, but it's so worth it.
Yeah, it's interesting when you have a good laugh as well. If you've been bereft of laughter for a while, for a long while, and suddenly something tickles you, you can't stop. It's ridiculous. It hurts, actually. There are like rib fractures going on, it feels like sometimes when you laugh so hard. And everybody's looking at you and what the hell's going on with you? But it doesn't matter because you're kind of in that moment, you're in that joyful, mirthful, bubble bursting kind of wonderful moment. Then it's gone and it holds you for a little while until you do it again. But some people just don't. And I think that that's part of it, is that for some reason we hold it in so much. It's like we're not allowed to just burst out in merriment all over the shop.
Well, and if that's the case where we're not allowing ourselves that burst, and to what Mary was saying, it's such an important thing, right? Just those micro yeses that we give ourselves, those very tiny moments where it's like, I'm going to let myself be curious here. I'm going to let myself rest and not beat myself up about it. I'm going to let myself do this thing that I like without having to justify it, without having to make an excuse for it or explain it away, right? Those small moments that we give ourselves, they do build.
Mm. And if somebody is going to snuff out your mojo, just don't tell them you're going to go and do it. Come back and say you've done it, and look, there's a picture. Wow, look at that. I did it.
But perhaps it's that point we just need to give ourselves permission to keep a hold of our mojo, and to flame the flyers. That's not the right word.
And the flame.
Fan the flame.
flame.
Words are not working for me tonight. I do apologise.
Have you been on the Kit Kats tonight?
Maybe I've just not had enough coffee. Maybe I need the Kit Kat. That's what it is.
Jennifer takes another slug. That's a cup of mojo. It's interesting, isn't it, that we tend to get the feeling that these things are outside of us, that we have to absorb them from the outside, when actually, we were talking about things earlier on, these are things that we produce. We have these dynamo kind of power pack situations inside us, the Hara PowerPoint for a start. And it's like, if we really, really, part of it is that we're not in our bodies at all most of the time. We're worried about them. We kind of protect them and clothe them, but we're not actually connected inside the way that we could be in order to understand just how powerful we actually are.
Well, and if we looked at it and we asked ourselves, if I trusted my vitality mattered as much as my responsibilities, what would be different? I let this matter.
And if you mind it matters. If you don't mind it, doesn't matter. But matter is part of mind, because that's just how it works. And it's the reaction, the difference between the reaction and the response, maybe for you guys as well, getting that difference of, instead of reacting to the idea of change, responding to it in a way that is more evolutionary or holistic.
Bit of that comes from taking back that little piece of, I'm in charge. It's not happening. It's, I'm choosing what happens to me. It's not actually just passive in the process. I have choice. And choosing to find joy. I have a task I sometimes give people that says, gift yourself a daily treat. because you're worth it. Now, you try and come up with 31 treats so that you have a different one for every day of the month. It can be a fun challenge. But it's about finding those moments every day. Yeah, I'm doing something for myself every day because I'm worth it. And I think in terms of Mojo, having that little bit of fun or that bit of something that gives you that little bit of energy, actually making a habit of that every day, I think I kind of like the idea of this. Like I'm playing with ideas here, some new tasks for my clients, some things I can get them to do. It's just
interesting
because
because
we have to work at it sometimes. Sometimes we actually need to work at it. It's okay. It's a good thing to do.
I have a
And the
friend
more we
who,
do it, the more we'll have it. We'll just be just full of joy.
yeah, I have a friend who decided that she was going to have 365 days of adventure. And on the surface, when you think 365 days of adventure, how the hell is that going to happen? But actually, she started by walking backwards down the road.
Okay.
Honestly. And it's a case of stretching your understanding of that way of being. Now, she took it to learning Eskimo, learning different languages that were, nobody could really speak properly because you have to really, like the clicking and the at the back of the throat kind of thing that comes with some of the languages. Also, she started off with haiku, and then she involved everybody else because that will happen. And we ended up doing a renga. And I never actually understood what a renga was, but actually, it's a haiku on speed. And it's like a whole thing that just becomes building and building and building. And I just like going around 4 or 5 different people and then another 4 or 5 different people. But this all kind of bridged all the way through. And she ended up writing a book, fairy tales. She made up her own fairy tales. And it was amazing because she was doing little videos every day. And she did it. And she didn't go out the country, she didn't go and scale a mountain, she didn't go and dive into the deepest depths of the ocean. But there were little things that she tested herself on every day. Her limitations, like taking trolley from the supermarket over the line. Because that would be so bad. That would be so bad. But then doing that and understanding that really it wasn't. The sky didn't fall.
So
She
that
took
just shows you the adventure doesn't have to be huge. It just
exactly.
has to be an adventure in your mind's eye as to
Yeah.
what that needs to be.
I think that's it. We have this whole big vista of adventure that we have to be able to, well, I have to be able to do this, this, and this, and get this, this, and this to go there. Well, actually, for some people, just getting out of the gate could be the adventure. Just getting out of their seat could be an adventure. Learning a new language. So when it comes to reigniting or fanning the flame of your mojo, perhaps it might be a good idea to think about not the big things, but the first smallest step that you can take back towards becoming this totally lit person. And it could take you a little while. It could take you 365 days of incremental adventures. But it doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means that maybe you want to, maybe you would like to. Maybe it would be nice to see what it's like on the other side of that gate. Maybe it would be nice to speak to that person that you see walking by you every day, but you never say hello. Maybe it's time to stop being so insular, because being insulated in life kind of puts your mojo on a peak. You can't show off your beautiful peacock feathers if you hide them. So think about your mojo. Think about how it would be to fan the flame and get it all burning nice and bright and bring yourself back to the party. We'll see you next time.